Well, good afternoon, everyone. My phone tells me Verizon time says it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and begin. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for the Rec 440 Capstone project. A little bit of background on this. Some of you may know from tromping around the woods in the surrounding Paul Smith's properties that there's quite a few hidden lean-tos, cabins, and backcountry infrastructure. And a lot of this infrastructure was built between the early 1970s and mid 1990s, when Paul Smith had a very large forest recreation program. And every year there was a new lean-to or bridge or cabin that went up on the properties. And unfortunately, many of these have since fallen into disrepair, and quite a few alumni have connections to these lean-tos and cabins. And so the recreation students were the ones that decided, hey, we really need to get an inventory and understand what's out there so that we can better preserve it. And as we continue to expand the parks and conservation program, this has really become a focal point for us moving forward as a way to preserve an asset and also teach some really important backcountry infrastructure maintenance and repair skills. So with this, I'd like to welcome you all, and we're going to allow each student to give a brief introduction, telling us about their major and then the specific area of the project that they focused on. And from there, we'll roll into about a 45-minute presentation. We'll wrap up with some questions. And then for those of you that want to see the work that the students actually did in the field, we'll be taking a trip out to one of our local lean-tos just past the sawmill called the Bluebird lean-to at the end. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll hand it over to the students.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathaniel Fisher, and I'm a recreation major here at Paul Smith's. And for my individual contribution to this capstone, I looked at overuse and abuse issues of backcountry infrastructure at a federal, state, and local scale. I then applied what I learned to those same backcountry infrastructure issues here at Paul Smith's College.
Hi, my name is Matthew Huffman. I am a recreation and leisure management major as well. And my individual contribution to this project was examining the influence and value of implementing citizen science to collect data to better preserve the condition of lean-tos in the backcountry of Paul Smith College.
My name is Ethan Lauser, and I'm a recreation major here at Paul Smith. For my individual contribution, I studied the impacts of different types of transportation on the trail systems that lead to these lean-tos.
Hi, my name is Garrett Rollins. I'm a Parks and Conservation Management major. For my individual contribution in this capstone project, I created a prioritization and maintenance plan for the Paul Smith College backcountry infrastructure using data-driven decision-making.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Slayton. I'm a rec major here at Paul Smith's, and my contribution to our project was studying the effects of overuse in the high peaks and the possible strategies for mitigating similar effects within Paul Smith's easement land and backcountry infrastructure.
For our capstone, we developed and utilized a survey tool called Survey 123 to assess Paul Smith's easement land lean-tos. We did this to help better understand the shape that our lean-tos are in, so that in the future, the college can decide to direct resources to properly manage these sites.
The information collected in this project has developed a well-documented representation of these sites' condition in the present time. This information will help future classes and project groups to organize the prioritization of site remediation in Paul Smith College's backcountry. As you can see in the photo displayed on this slide, this lean-to shows a significant sign of lean. Because of this lack of attention paid to it, this lean-to will continue to bow until it inevitably collapses.
All right, so the first step to this project began with scoping, which was phase 1 out of 3 phases throughout the semester-long project. And we focused on this phase for the first 3 weeks of the semester. We needed to find a problem within Paul Smith's easement land that our class was capable of solving. For anyone here wondering what easement land is, it's a plot of land owned by one person or organization, but others are allowed to use it. So in this case, Paul Smith's easement land is open for public recreational use, but it's still technically owned by Paul Smith's. So back to phase one, we began looking into different types of backcountry infrastructure like lean-tos, cabins, privies, bridges, boardwalks, and others, in search of a project that would both solve a problem and allow us to be able to work on it throughout the entire semester. So upon assessing these different kinds of infrastructure, we found that lean-tos on Paul Smith's easement land would be the best fit for the main focus of our capstone project. The reason we chose to focus on lean-tos was because we found that there was no up-to-date management plan for most of the lean-tos on Paul Smith's easement land. And because there was no database Paul Smith students could access that showed the condition, location, and other surrounding factors of all the lean-tos on Paul Smith's easement land. So what knowledge and problem-solving techniques did we use as a class to identify issues and come up with solutions? When it came to figuring out how we were going to assess and survey 16 different lean-tos spread throughout Paul Smith's land in one semester, we decided that every week we would split up into 2 groups in order to make the best progress on our lean-to inventory in the quickest amount of time. This strategy helped us efficiently assess all the lean-to sites we needed to collect information on within our 3-hour class period. Also, going into this project, we utilized several helpful resources, one of which being Doug Fitzgerald, who worked for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. He's now retired, but he knows all there is to know about backcountry infrastructure, and gave us a lot of helpful insight on lean-tos and privies when our class met with him in the beginning of this semester. Another very important resource that we definitely couldn't have completed our project without was ArcGIS. We'll go more in depth on that throughout the presentation, but ArcGIS and the Survey 123 tool within ArcGIS is what allowed us to efficiently survey and assess lean-tos and other infrastructure, and it also helped us compile all of our data. So to begin our learning process, after we determined what problem we were going to solve, the first thing we needed to do was become familiar with lean-tos, all the lean-to parts and anatomy, what to look for when assessing a lean-to's condition, such as condition of the foundation, the deacon seat, the purlins, and so on, which will be elaborated on more later. In the beginning of the semester, we brainstormed ideas for lean-to survey questions via an assignment where we created our own lean-to assessment rubrics and discussed them in class to develop ideas on what types of questions should actually be on these lean-to assessments. So meeting with Doug was also a part of this process. He was both a helpful resource and helped us learn more about backcountry infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, ArcGIS was one of our main resources, but it also contributed to a large portion of our learning process because you can use it for so many different things, and knowing just the basics took a bit of practice to learn. And the last part of our learning process before heading out into the field was creating our plan of action. This included factors such as which lean-tos to assess on what days, how many lean-tos to assess per outing, finding lean-tos on an older map without the use of technology, and successfully locating them, and what gear to bring with us on these outings.
So in order to get a better idea of the conditions of backcountry infrastructure, specifically focusing on the lean-tos on Paul Smith College easement land, as mentioned earlier, we worked to develop a baseline understanding of ArcGIS, a mapping and land surveying tool and how Survey 123 worked. In order to develop an understanding of this program, we did an exercise that tested Survey 123 methodologies. We then applied the lessons learned from this exercise later on when it came time to develop and execute our survey. After we became familiar with ArcGIS and Survey 123, we got to work creating our survey. As mentioned earlier, we learned the anatomy of a lean-to, which contributed to the specific sections of our survey, which will be discussed later on. We also used lean-to rescue survey in creating our survey, which you can see in the next slide, in order to identify the most crucial parts of the lean-tos we were assessing. While we were developing our survey, we were also tasked with our own personal reports. For my report, I was looking at the effects of overuse and abuse of backcountry infrastructure at a federal, state, and local scale. Then, based off the lessons I learned from evaluating each of those and the pre-existing solutions that are being used, I came up with possible solutions that could be implemented here at Paul Smith College. One of the solutions that is in place is the use of the Visitor Use Management Framework, shown here, and is used by the National Park Service. What I found to be interesting was the similarity between our survey and the Visitor Use Management Framework. So after we had created our first survey, we met with Doug Fitzgerald, who is currently retired, but is a DEC backcountry infrastructure expert, as Ben mentioned. During this test period, we were at the Bluebird Lean-To. While there, we showed Doug our survey and he gave us feedback on what else should be included. Doug also provided us with a connection to Lean-To Rescue, pictured here on the left, who has offered to help us with this project in the future.
As for the first steps of the process behind this, the lean-to needs to be found. Once a lean-to is found, a survey will be completed on each of the given lean-tos. This will start the decision-making process for the prioritization.
After meeting once again to finalize our revisions on our survey, we headed out into the field to collect data and assess the conditions of the lean-tos, which you can see images of here. This work took us the majority of the semester to complete, as we had to travel to each of the lean-tos shown on the map in the next slide. Ethan will further discuss the logistics of our travel later. While we were in the field, we were assessing and ranking the conditions of things like the foundation and the walls of the lean-tos. The way in which we assess these will be discussed later on.
This map shown here was drawn by Doug Fitzgerald and is the original map from 1983 that was given to our class to try and find our way to each lean-to. Not knowing if the lean-to was still there, we would embark every week to try and find each given lean-to. On this map, you'll see several different colored lines and circles. The lines indicate some of the ways we took to get to each of the lean-tos. The red line is the route that was taken to get to Pete's Rock lean-to, in which is a lean-to that is visible from the college campus across Lower St. Regis Lake. The blue circle is a marsh area that we had to cross to get to Pete's Rock. As for the green line and circle, that is a route that was taken to get to Black Pond, Long Pond, and Little Black Pond lean-to. This day was one of the more intense days, as with snowpack still on the ground and approximately 3 miles of walking. Lastly, the orange line and circle was one of our first days out collecting data. We used the red dot trail to access Osgood, Little Osgood, and Church Pond lean-to. All these trails shown are only a few that we use to access the lean-tos. While completing the survey, the first question asks for the coordinates of each lean-to. After the survey is completed, it goes into a database. The coordinates of each lean-to are put into a map that shows the approximate location of each lean-to with more accurate location coordinates. This can help to further assist someone who is going to later fix the lean-to and needs to know the exact access location.
The survey consisted of examining the core features on the lean-to, such as the walls, purlins, deacon seat, foundation, rafters, roof boards, and shingles, as well as the condition of the dock, if it had a dock, and the condition of the fire ring and privy, along with if there were any site threats in the area. We used a rating scale of 1, needing repairs immediately, to 5, being essentially new.
ArcGIS Survey 123 was used to create our 67-question survey like you have heard previously in this presentation. Throughout the survey, there are questions based off the amenities that may be available at the lean-to. For example, when yes is clicked on the privy, more questions drop down. A 1 to 5 star rating, from 1 being the worst condition and 5 being the best, an area to put how far the privy is from the lean-to, a fill level selection to let us know how full the privy may be, and a notes area to put anything else that someone should know when analyzing the data.
We surveyed a total of 16 lean-tos based upon the condition of both the lean-to and the surrounding site. We traveled to each of these lean-tos using various methods of transportation, usually trying to get as close as possible with a vehicle before switching to snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, or when the snow eventually melted, hiking. We used the map that Doug made to help us locate each one of and to establish a GPS coordinate once we're there. Once there, we began the assessment of the lean-to, going through each question and noting anything of importance on the additional comments section of our survey.
When the data collection was complete, analysis of the data collected had begun. This is phase 2 of the project, the inventory and analysis. Going through Survey 123 database that was created from the survey and looking over graphs to figure out the condition of each lean-to surveyed. The average for all lean-tos by shingles was a 2.8, and which is indicative of large moss coverage, leaking, and damages to the existing roof.
The average for the decancy was a 3 out of 5. On our scale, a 3 meant it was serviceable, but there were signs of damage, and that it didn't need to immediately be fixed. One of the most common issues we saw with the decancy, at least structurally, was the ends were starting to rot due to being exposed to the weather, as you can see in the picture. This is a structural issue, and if left untreated for too long, a full replacement of the seat will be needed. The reason why it started to rot is that the ends of the decancy went past the roof line, so they were exposed more to the elements. The purlins were rated as a 3.6 out of 5. This means it was somewhere between a 3 and a 4, meaning that damage is apparent in some cases, but are still structurally sound and don't need replacing anytime soon. The most common problem for these were minor rotting of the ends due to weathering, and if left untreated, will also need to be replaced soon. Purlins provide lateral structure support for the lean-to roof. The walls also came in at a 3.6 out of 5, meaning that they are structurally sound without much damage other than weathering. However, on a couple of the lean-tos, the sill log on the bottom, as you can see in the photo, is heavily rotting and needs repairs immediately. The same goes for the other lean-to, which is not pictured with the same problem.
The average foundation is 2.9 out of 5. What this score means is that the majority of these lean-tos foundations are in poor condition and are in need of repair, but still functional. Examples of the conditions of these lean-tos foundations were that they were either sinking, missing, or heavily damaged or degraded.
Depending on where the lean-to is placed and what the ground is beneath it, it could lead to the foundation sinking. The Upper St. Regis lean-to is seeing this issue. The foundation has sunk, causing the bottom logs to come in contact with the ground. When encountering the ground, it causes moisture to get into the logs and is prone to rotting. This problem causes the lifespan of any given lean-to to be decreased.
An inevitable side effect of these sites being used is the recording of art, names, and otherwise. Some tasteful, some not so much. In the lower left-hand photo displayed, you will see an example of when vandalism is taken too far. In this case, Brian had braved the journey out to a particular lean-to with his chainsaw. He carved what you see into one of the purlins, a crucially important piece to the integrity of these structures. While the structure has prevailed, it remains nonetheless scarred. Other examples of this kind of pollution and disrespect to the sites included the leaving of garbage in cans, the burning of said garbage and other miscellaneous objects, and spray painted, shallow etching, and carving of surfaces to leave names and other various phrases. To better understand the overall condition of the lean-tos we studied, I compiled a list of survey questions which used our Likert scale method to rate the condition of the lean-tos. This average was made from the following reported data sets: the condition of the fire ring, picnic area, floor, the privy, the condition of the deacon seat, roof boards, purlins, foundation, shingles, rafters, and walls. We found that many of these lean-tos and their surrounding sites infrastructure lacked attention in many ways. This photo is of a once utilized privy located behind the Pete's Rock lean-to. The condition which this privy demonstrates encapsulates perfectly the lack of attention paid to these sites in most cases. The condition rating considering the criteria listed averaged a 3.3. Essentially, this would be the equivalent of receiving a 66% on an assignment you may have handed in. For this presentation of similar quality, you would likely leave the Zoom call knowing you spent the last 40 to 50 minutes listening to something about lean-tos, but having learned very little. Basically, this means that the current state of our backcountry infrastructure performs its function, but its quality is far from satisfactory.
All the lean-to sites we visited have water access, but only some of them have docks, and the ones that do are barely functioning. This has caused for the surrounding area to erode from the hauling of canoes, but more on that further. Another way to access these lean-tos is by the trail system. All of the lean-tos have a trail system, except for Pete's Rock, but these trails are mostly hiking trails. But according to the easement land documents, all forms of human-powered travel are allowed on these trails. The only thing that is restricted is the use of ATVs and other motorized forms of travel. The current trail system could be improved to allow for better access to these lean-to locations by having more signage and having a management plan to keep the trails in good condition.
What you'll see here is another example of the erosion which Ben and Nate discussed earlier. While the effects such as these were commonplace in the outdoors, they were greatly influenced by user interaction. This is a photo of a commonly used boat entry and exit at the downtown lean-to. This eroding slope is a result of use without the practice of maintenance efforts to preserve it. What you'll notice is the difference a few meters can make when it comes to this. On the upper left-hand side, what you'll see is where the boat access use has been concentrated, thus showing signs of significant erosion. The photo below this is what the slope might look like with less usage or better preservation of its integrity.
So in my capstone paper, I discussed the effects of overuse in the high peaks, which included trail degradation, vandalism in multiple forms, like littering and graffiti, leave no trace violations, and much more. During our outings throughout the semester, we noticed many of the same overuse effects in the high peaks within backcountry infrastructure on Paul Smith's land. We found bottles and cans scattered around lean-tos, as Matt mentioned, other garbage on and around sites, writing and carving on the lean-tos and privies, also previously mentioned by Matt. Bottle caps hammered into the ends of purlins, as you can see in the photo on the right of this slide, and trail or site erosion, like the picture from the previous slide. In addition to the signs of overuse we found at some of these sites, we also came across illegally built trails, and as Ethan discussed earlier, unauthorized motorized vehicles like four-wheelers and side-by-sides in an area of Paul Smith's easement land that we visited multiple times during the semester to collect lean-to inventory. So how can overuse and its effects on Paul Smith's land be mitigated? In my capstone paper, I mentioned several possible mitigation strategies, such as leave no trace education frameworks, rerouting trails, limiting the timing of use, rebuilding trails and infrastructure to withstand heavier use, and so on. But there are a few mitigation strategies that I think would be best for the well-being and condition of lean-tos and other infrastructure on Paul Smith's land. One strategy that is both mentioned in my paper and being implemented within some Adirondack trail systems, along with our visitor interpretive center trails system, is a permit system. So like other permit systems, such as fishing permits, for example, a lean-to permit may not completely prevent people without one from using the lean-tos on Paul Smith's land, but it may reduce overuse and degradation of these sites. One other mitigation strategy I believe would benefit the well-being of lean-tos is signage on and around lean-to sites, providing leave no trace guidelines and other information as to why it is important to follow these guidelines. One additional mitigation strategy that has the potential to provide an opportunity for outside users of Paul Smith's land to continue collecting data as we have been on this backcountry infrastructure is citizen science, which Matt will elaborate on in a moment.
Some of the limitations we faced down the field is due to when we conducted these surveys. It was done in late winter to early spring, so there was snow and ice covering everything. We had to rate things based upon what we could uncover by shoveling off roofs and clearing fire pits and unburying foundations to be able to get a better look. Being able to fully inspect the dock under the ice was another issue that we faced, as we had to try and chip away to get a better view of it. Another limitation we faced was the time. This had multiple effects on when we could have done, like being able to further test our survey before going and surveying all the lean-tos to get a more diversified data set, as well as being able to tackle a bigger repair project than what we did. Other than time, funding and resources also limited us from being able to do more repairs to the lean-tos.
Some of the other challenges we faced while creating this survey was the inability to have multiple people working on the survey at the same time without disrupting the entire thing. Another challenge we faced during our field test was the cold draining phone batteries and the survey jumping around while trying to complete specific sections, as well as blurry photos, which you can see in this image here.
As for prioritization on the 16 lean-tos, I originally picked 12 of the worst condition lean-tos to write my paper on. No matter the condition of the lean-to, all of them are going to need work. The difference is how bad a condition are they in, and will they need to be repaired sooner rather than later. Being not as bad and able to wait. How this works is the first prioritized is the one that needs work as soon as possible. It either has holes or rotting occurring. Next is the lean-to that can withstand not being fixed right away, but still have damage such as a bad roof. These can usually wait for a year or two. Lastly are the ones that need minimal repairs or none at all, no major issues and no structural damage. Church Pond lean-to is the worst condition lean-to that we encountered while doing our data collection. It has been struck on its right side by a fallen tree, causing the overhang of the roof to be smashed. This has led to severe damages to the roof and roof boards. Rotting has started on this lean-to and will need to be repaired as soon as possible. The entire roof, including the roof boards, will need to be replaced. Black Pond lean-to is the second lean-to that is prioritized as being one of the worst condition. It looks like a tree branch fell from a nearby tree, putting 2 holes in the roof. This has caused the left side of the back wall to start rotting, The only way this can be repaired is if the rotten logs are cut out and new ones are shiplapped back together. For rotting not to occur again, the roof board along with the entire roof will need to be replaced. The maintenance plan was my part of this project. I wrote a maintenance plan and prioritization of 12 of the worst lean-tos on the Paul Smith College campus property. Each lean-to has its own maintenance plan, starting with the exact coordinates of each lean-to, a brief description of the lean-to that has where it is located and how far it is from a specific area, along with its amenities, and how far they are from the lean-to. Also, there's a list of issues as to what is wrong with the lean-to, a maintenance list of what needs to be repaired, materials needed that tells the reader exactly what they need and the price of those materials, and lastly, the approximate time frame that it will take to complete all the work.
Based on all the information presented previously, we took all the data we gathered as a group in order to prioritize what lean-to we wanted to work on and renovate, given the time frame we had for this course. As a group, we decided the best project for us was to add a metal roof to the Bluebird lean-to, which Garrett will discuss in further detail in the next section. The images that are appearing on the screen show you the process we took in order to properly add this metal roof to the Bluebird lean-to, cleaning the roof, building a wooden frame, then attaching the metal panels to the frame. I invite you all to please join us for a short walk out to the Bluebird lean-to following this presentation at 3:30.
This is the Bluebird lean-to that was talked about in the previous slide. It needed a new roof due to some severe weathering. Our class installed a brand new metal roof on the lean-to. This would be phase 3 of the project, where action is taken to repair the lean-tos of their given issues. A metal roof may look nice and last longer, but it is almost double the price of your average asphalt roof that you find on most lean-tos in the area.
Considering the issues we've discussed, I wanted to propose a long-term and permanent solution to this lack in maintenance. Citizen science is a method of data collection which utilizes volunteer-led work to gather relevant and accurate information. The implementation of citizen science in our backcountry would provide similarly accurate results to what we found with none of the initiative from Paul Smith College. This method of data collection allows users to frequently utilize these areas to participate in a stewardship activity to record the condition of these assets without the organization required of a capstone class. Some benefits included with implementing a citizen science program or initiative would be increased user interaction and interest within these resources. It serves as a great cost-effective solution to the school. It promotes stewardship. It provides an up-to-date database, and it assists with prioritizing maintenance initiatives. In 2019, for her master's proposal, Emily Ann Reynolds proposed that with appropriate training, citizens with little to no familiarity with science-related processes could gather accurate and relevant data. Over the course of 3 months, her test subjects spent their days collecting, analyzing, and reporting data, which was then reviewed by a board of scientists. 72% of these trained professionals found that their work was sufficient to be included in research and could be relied upon as accurate. Companies such as iNaturalist have used the civilian science model for years now, using trained specialists to check the accuracy of data. They utilize volunteer work to track things such as a butterfly, migrations, the expansion of invasive species, and a plethora of other projects. This growing popularity of citizen science also caught the attention of the National Park System, which has begun to slowly integrate toward a more civilian-based information system to track such things as invasive species. Throughout the course of this semester, we became very familiar with the lean-tos and the conditions of Paul Smith's backcountry infrastructure. We identified and rated the conditions of these infrastructure, concluding that their current overall condition is poor. This is something that the Paul Smith's community, including students, faculty, and alumni, as well as newer potential partners, such as the DEC and Lean-To Rescue, wish to remedy. Our project has culminated a source of data which future classes and organizations can use and update to better improve these data. The future holds a great potential for these resources, and we hope that our Capstone project will serve as a significant step in making these a more tangible reality. For those of you who are on campus today, Brett, next slide. Yeah, okay. For those of you who are on campus today, we would like to invite you to our class in front of the sawmill at 3:30 for an in-person demonstration of our work replacing the roof on the Bluebird lean-to and a live run of my volunteer-led data collection survey.
All right, so at this time, if we have any questions from the audience, I know the class would be happy to field them. You can feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat.
Hi, this is Brett Fisher, Nathaniel's father. Can you guys hear me?
You
Yes.
can, yes.
Yeah, job well done. Very impressive work on the metal roof and your assessments. And I love the use of GIS in all your work. Just a general question. Is there like state grant programs that can help subsidize for some of the other lean-tos that you guys keep an eye out for? Or are there private donors that, you know, contribute to matters in the Adirondacks that you keep an eye at as well? Or
I'll let the students take a stab at this one first.
okay.
How about what did you guys learn about what DEC is willing to do? What was one of the pieces of data you collected there that they're going to actually assist with?
So one of the things was trying to find out if the lean-tos had privies on the grounds. And we found, I don't remember the number, I think there were 6 that did not have it. And if they were on easement lands, the DEC is going to, I think, Brett, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but donate lean-tos to those, or
Privies.
donate privies to those lean-tos that do not have a privy on them.
Yeah, so that's the level of commitment at this point from DEC is that they'll, since they're concerned with water pollution in particular and disposal of human waste, they've signed up to make the donation for the privies. A lot of this is really fallen to volunteer organizations. So at the beginning, Nathaniel, do you want to tell them about the organization that you mentioned a little bit and what they do?
I can. So the other organization that was mentioned was Lean-to Rescue, and they are an organization that goes around to different lean-tos to help, update them, make repairs on them, and they kind of focus on those lean-tos that are in more disarray than others.
That's great.
And there's one final organization that the group actually looked at. It's called Adopt a Lean-to.
Right.
And amazingly, there's actually a waiting list to become an adopter of an Adirondack lean-to. The problem is that we don't get any say in who gets to adopt them. And we know that quite a few alums have connections to specific lean-tos that they might have built or stayed at while they were students here. So we're going to try and internally have sort of our own Adopt a Lean-to program where we work through the alumni office to make sure that alums are engaged in the maintenance and preservation of these. And then the last piece is maybe the cabin and trails crew. Does anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess the cabin and trails crew is just, essentially what they're willing to do is provide us with assets and resources which we can rely upon to, further preserve the integrity and condition of the lean-tos. A lot of very similar initiatives as to what Lean-to Rescue and the DEC are proposing to help with. Yeah,
so it's sort of an internal program that we're running to maintain backcountry infrastructure here and at the Vic property as well.
So one last question: is your ArcGIS page with all the lean-tos public? Is that something if I could log on and look at, or is it just published internally at Paul Smith's?
So right now it's just internal. And actually, one of the things that drove this project was DEC recently listed the lean-tos that are on Paul Smith's land under easement on their website. So we're expecting more traffic at these lean-tos because many of them, frankly, unless you were a student or an alum here, you didn't know they exist. And now it's being basically broadcast to the world that there's a whole network of lean-tos on Paul Smith's land that is technically open to the public. So this is really the back end of this in terms of the maintenance side, but DEC is going to be publishing a map, for example, that has the location of all of these.
Which is also why there's value in implementing a community-led database system, so that increases the averages and the amount of data collected, which was the initiative of what I was doing, which is publicly accessible.
Well, great. Thank you.
Questions?
Hello, my name is Gary Huffman. I'm the father of Matthew Huffman. Good job today, guys. May I ask a question?
Please do.
So has there been consideration as we talk about resources and how to restore these lean-tos? Has there been any consideration or thought as to how the college itself could be utilized? You have a student resource there. Could classes, a class or some curriculum help with participating in restoration of some of these?
Yeah, so we'll have a capstone class next semester that will take the data from this class and some of the really, really poor condition lean-tos and actually act on the prioritized list and rebuild them. So we'll have some students doing that, and then the cabin and trails crew is actually a student-based crew that where it's sort of like a work study job where they can go out and actually repair some of these. So and they would work under a faculty or tool room mentor for that. So great question. Anything else from the audience?
Just, hey, folks, students, I know several of you, and congratulations on this great capstone. I'm also interested in the value to student life of these lean-tos. And you spent the semester snowshoeing and skiing to these and possibly sleeping in them, although maybe not. My sense over the years is that these lean-tos are not as used as they once were. You know, they're almost like old abandoned haunted houses. And if they were really restored and publicized, our current students could just take such great advantage of this. Do you have any sense of how whether improvement or rehabilitation of these lean-tos would be more attractive potentially to students to actually get out of the dorms and get into the backcountry?
So I if I may touch a bit upon that, I know the lean-tos that are more on campus, like the Bluebird lean-tos, are used kind of as hangout spots, recreation spots. So I think with the publishing of the map by the DEC of these lean-tos, I think definitely would bring more students out of their dorms to go venture out to these lean-tos, and then especially if they're restored and in better condition, that I think that would also contribute to some more access of these. I'm not sure if that fully answered your question or not.
Well, that's fine. I think my other sense is that these are historic structures too, more or less. You can make the argument. Looks like
absolutely.
Yeah, and there's some variations in the construction of them. I could almost see some really great interpretation of each one of these. So a panel of some kind telling the story of it. So this is a vanishing part of our college's history that I think we need to invest in and bring fully back into the fold.
For sure.
Great comment. And really, I should mention that a lot of this started with, you heard the students reference Doug Fitzgerald, an alum and longtime DEC employee who's really led the charge to get people to remember these lean-tos and then get the students engaged in this. He spent a good amount of time with them, really educating them on the history of them, both as a part of the cultural history of the Adirondacks, but also sort of part of our internal history here at Paul Smith. So big thanks to Doug. I know Doug is out actually hiking in the Grand Canyon today. Otherwise, he would have been here for today's presentation. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. And if there are no other questions, we're going to have at 3:30, about 45 minutes from now, we'll be meeting at the Paul Smith College Sawmill, Dillon's Mill. And then from the sawmill, we'll take about a 5-minute walk out to the Bluebird lean-to where the students replace the roof. And also to give Matthew's citizen science QR code app a shot to see how it works for engaging citizens in ranking the condition and needs of our lean-to. So thanks again for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.